Greetings, beloved. We are Trace Scorch and we have important information for you. The idea of protest is primitive, it's quite outdated, and the challenges that we are faced with as a collective is far greater than what is known to the public at the moment. Now, there's a faction of an insidious agenda, sinister forces of people who are invested in trying to take over the world and make it a one world government. And the way they intend on doing this is by creating conflicts between nations around the world, and this is happening already, as you can see. So they want to create a conflict within all nations and destabilize them from within, and then come outside as the ones with the solution for the problem which they created to begin with. So it's a challenge for the government because some factions of the government are aware of this insidious agenda and these people. So they are not aware, or they are not sure which protest is real and which one is staged by these, we'll just call them these sinister entities. So the government might be trying to secure its sovereignty, and at the expense of doing that, there will be casualty if people keep on protesting. Now, protesting doesn't really solve anything. It's a primitive means of opposition. And Nigeria, as you're faced with a president with military background, so understand that he sees things and he processes his reality based on his military background. So what he's saying is not what it is. And you can't hold him accountable for that because you guys voted an old soldier into office. So whatever trauma he has in his head, he will have to manifest that in multiple ways and in sinister ways. And having the idea that there might be some insidious group that's trying to take over the government around the world, that will also instigate that the people are the problem. The people are the opposition, and not just, regular citizens trying to speak up for the oppression that they've been experiencing for years now. So our advice to citizens is that do not protest. Do not go outside to protest and resist the government. The government's already gearing up and arming up to, if possible, shoot at whatever cost. Okay, and doing that will only just reinforce these sinister entities to, make their points learned. Because once they destabilize the nation from within, they will come out with a solution of a one world government, and you don't want that to happen. So here's the solution: do not protest. However, if you must and you should, gather yourself. Let's all meet out, but don't call it protest. Whatever you do, if you want to gather yourself as people or as citizens and you want to speak about the situations, the challenges that you're faced with as a collective, gather yourself as a camaraderie, as some kind of social networking group, as some kind of social media hangout, just call it anything but a protest. The government wouldn't be able to say people shouldn't, get together. That's absurd. So the idea of protesting and resisting and fighting and shouting and carrying placards and, making post signs, it's old. And for someone with military background, he has experience in resisting oppositions that he sees as a threat. Because indeed, our movement as people collectively with one voice is a threat to any group or any old entity or old powers, So we need to start thinking differently. Nigerians, you're faced with an old man. You should be able to come up with creative ideas that wouldn't, be at the risk of casualty of citizens' life. We've already lost so many citizens in the past due to government negligence and stupidity, basically. So citizens have to come from a more elevated scope of reasoning, and this is what we are advocating. Do not protest, but if you must gather yourself, meet as a camaraderie and not as some resistance opposition group. Let us all gather and discuss with one another how we're going to move things forward. There are many ways to change things without fighting, without resisting. we can all come together as a collective and contribute money together and start making the changes that we deem are necessary. And I believe this is the first step that we need to start together in this camaraderie that we will be setting up. So if we can get citizens, even if it's 10,000 citizens, to contribute 10,000 naira together, and we meet even if it's every month and just talk, have fun, discuss. I'll perform some of my music. I can do that for free as well. And we could just chill and discuss about how we're going to move things forward. That's a more productive means of, changing things than, risking it. Because when you're protesting, tell the government to do the things that the government ought to already do, that means you still have hope in the government to change, and they are not built to do things that are in your best interest. They are built to control. Understand that. Just get that to your head. So first step that we're advocating and we're advising citizens is that let us come together as a camaraderie of light and discuss about how we're going to make changes in the country, contribute money together. We need funding, and then we start making the necessary changes that are very, very important. And one of those changes will be, and what we need to start with, is building and installing trees, building renewable energy. And those folks or those engineers in Nigeria who know how to create generator that can run on water, or that sufficient efficient means of energy generating schemes, we should gather together and fund these creative ideas. That's a more reasonable and smarter approach than fighting and resisting and expecting old people to do what young people are built for. Let's just get that out of the way. First, let's gather as a camaraderie, contribute funds together, and start planting trees. Because in 4 years' time, it's going to get really hot in Nigeria. And this is not information that you expect old people to know. So you shouldn't, once again, expect old people to create the solutions for things that they are not capable of comprehending. So let's gather together, get fundings together, and start planting trees, because in 4 years' time it's going to get hot, and the trees is what's going to create some kind of shade for us as a collective, filter the air from all the CO2 emission, and make the environment prettier and not filled with toxic smoke and waste and all this whole shenanigans that are really corrupting the biofuels of humans. So let's start with that. Forget about the word protest. Cancel it from your vocabulary. Camaraderie. No government is going to come outside and say citizens shouldn't, hang out. All right? The album will be out in 2 days' time, in transit in 2 days. Make sure you get it. Let's start supporting one another, all right? This is how we're going to change things, and not by resisting. It's just the same old shenanigans. One person oppressed, the other one resists, someone comes up to save. It's just that whole trilateral bias that doesn't support growth. There's a higher field of understanding about the dynamics of the way the world works, so we need to start using that. All right, we love you. Namaste.